Hello and welcome. If you're sitting down with a cup of tea or just taking a quiet moment for yourself, I invite you to stay with me for a little while. What I'm about to share has touched the hearts of thousands of older adults and may just shift the way you look at your later years. These are life lessons shared by a retired professor from Stanford University. He's in his late 70s now, and while he's no longer teaching in classrooms, his words are still teaching something much deeper: how to live wisely, gracefully, and peacefully in old age. Many people who've heard his message said they were deeply touched, because it was the kind of truth no one had spoken to them so plainly before. You see, when we're younger, we're often too busy to pause and think about what really matters. But once we reach our 60s and beyond, life slows down just enough for us to hear the things we used to ignore. And the professor began with something that surprises a lot of people, not about health or happiness, but about money. Firstly, he said, never let your children know the exact amount of your savings. Now that might sound a bit cold or even suspicious, but it isn't about distrust. It's about protecting the peace of your family. Because once money becomes too visible, even the kindest relationships can shift. Not necessarily out of greed, but because money changes how people think. The professor mentioned that nearly 70% of family disputes later in life come from arguments over assets. Maybe you've seen this too. Siblings who used to be close suddenly stop speaking over an inheritance. Sweet promises turning into bitterness. Parents feeling pressure to divide what they worked their whole lives to build. That's not the legacy any of us want to leave behind. So it's wiser to keep financial matters private. Plan ahead. Write things down clearly. But keep some things quietly to yourself. Not out of secrecy, but out of care. Secondly, he said, do not quarrel with your spouse. After 60, your partner isn't just your husband or wife anymore. They're your anchor. Don't let ego ruin it. When the children have moved out and built lives of their own, it's the two of you who remain in the same home, sharing the same silence. And silence can either feel heavy or comforting, depending on how you treat each other. The professor reminded us that when we're young, we share love. When we're old, we share loyalty. And loyalty, he said, must be nurtured. Too often, couples in their older years let small irritations pile up over dinner choices, TV volume, or who left the light on. But those little annoyances, if we're not careful, can chip away at the trust and tenderness that took decades to build. There's an older couple I once met, Leonard and May, married for 48 years. In their 30s, they argued all the time. But in their 70s, they'd sit quietly together, just holding hands. May once told me, at this age, we don't fight anymore. We remember how fast time moves now. That kind of perspective only comes with time. So if you're lucky enough to still have your spouse with you, treat them as a gift. Be patient. Be soft with your words. Because the person sitting across the table from you may be the only one who's truly shared the entire story of your life. Thirdly, he said, love your grandchildren, but from a healthy distance. You don't owe your golden years to raising your grandchildren. This one was difficult for many grandparents to hear, because raising grandchildren can feel like one more chance to pour out love. And it's true, there's nothing more heartwarming than hearing a little voice call out, Grandma or Grandpa. But here's the hard truth. Over 60% of older adults who care full-time for their grandkids report feeling physically and emotionally exhausted. The body isn't as strong as it used to be. The energy just isn't the same. And often, what begins as help turns into expectation. Your time, your strength, your money, they all get used up. And too often, the younger generation assumes you'll always be there. That's not their fault. They've grown up in a different world. But that's exactly why you need to draw the line. One woman, Rosa, told the professor she had been watching her twin granddaughters 5 days a week while her daughter worked. Rosa is 69. At first, she loved it. But after a year, her back hurt, her knees were swollen, and she had no time to rest or meet with friends. When she finally asked for a break, her daughter was shocked, not because she didn't care, but because she hadn't realized the toll. You see, if you don't speak up, people may never know you're hurting. And there's no shame in saying, I need to take care of myself now. Grandchildren are a blessing, but they are not your responsibility. Love them, visit them, laugh with them, but don't trade your golden years for unpaid labor. You've earned this time. Fourthly, he said, living alone isn't a problem. If you're living alone, do not rush into remarriage. Loneliness can be heavy. Yes, it can feel like the walls are closing in. But the professor warned that jumping into a new relationship late in life often leads to more pain than peace. You're no longer 25. Both people come into the relationship with decades of habits, families, values, and financial commitments. Blending those lives is not simple, and too often, it turns into friction rather than companionship. He shared the story of a man named Thomas, 74, who married a widow he met at church. They were both kind, both looking for warmth and support. But within 6 months, disagreement started over finances, routines, even where to spend holidays. Thomas's children didn't feel comfortable around her. Her family didn't fully accept him. Eventually, he confessed that he felt lonelier in marriage than when he was alone. It's not that later life love is impossible, but it must be approached with extreme clarity. Know why you want it, know who you're dealing with, and don't rush. There's also nothing wrong with enjoying your own company. Solitude is not failure. Sometimes it's freedom. And fifthly, the professor said something simple but powerful. Your home isn't just a house, it's your emotional fortress. So hold on to your house. No matter how sweet your child's words are or how promising their plans sound, don't give up your house easily. A house is more than 4 walls. It's where your memories live, where you sat by the window drinking coffee on quiet mornings, where you raised your children, where your footsteps still echo with history. Once it's gone, it's gone. And many elders who handed over their homes too soon ended up in unfamiliar spaces, feeling like guests in someone else's life. That's a painful way to end a life's journey. Of course, there may come a time when downsizing makes sense, or when moving in with family is necessary for health reasons. But that decision must be yours, not pressured, not manipulated. Yours, because your home is your final stronghold, and you have every right to keep it as long as you wish. Sixthly, he said about the art of stepping back from your children's lives. No matter how close you are to your children, never forget the principle of independence. He called it the crow-pushing principle, a reminder from nature. In the wild, mother crows push their young out of the nest when it's time. Not because they don't love them, but because it's how the young learn to fly. The professor explained that in old age, it works in reverse. We, the elders, must learn to live without leaning too heavily on our children. It's a delicate balance. On one hand, you've raised them, given your time, your energy, your entire life. Of course, it's natural to want support when you're older. But the truth is, the more we depend on them, emotionally, financially, or physically, the more strained the relationship can become. Not because they don't love us, but because modern life is heavy for them too. Jobs, children, loans, stress, it adds up. And when we lean too hard, we may unintentionally become a burden. An old gentleman named Carl once said, "I love my son with all my heart, but I don't want his love to come from guilt." That's it. That's the lesson. Let's show our children that we are still capable, still able to make decisions, pay our bills, run our errands. Not because we have to prove something, but because that's our way of loving them back. Through self-respect, through dignity. Seventhly, he said about the principle, stay over, don't move in. Visit, don't settle. Do not stay at your child's home for too long. Now, this may sound harsh at first, but hear it out. The professor wasn't being cold. He was being wise. As we get older, we sometimes forget that our presence, no matter how welcomed, can begin to feel heavy over time. Your children may smile and say, "Stay as long as you like." But behind those words, there are real-life pressures. A spouse who needs their space. Grandkids with routines. Schedules, boundaries, and modern family dynamics that are very different from what we knew. One woman, Linda, visited her daughter in New Jersey after surgery and stayed for 2 weeks. Her daughter was kind, her son-in-law was polite, but slowly, Linda noticed small things. the atmosphere shifted. Conversations got shorter. Her granddaughter began to retreat to her room more often. Linda didn't take it personally. She simply realized it was time to go. And when she left, she sent a small handwritten note. "Thank you for letting me be part of your life for a little while. Now I return to mine with gratitude." The professor compared it to tea. He said, "Tea tastes best when it's just the right warmth. Too hot and it burns. Too cold and it's dull." Be the warm cup of tea in their lives, not the boiling pot that overstays its welcome. Leave while the affection is still fresh. That's how love stays strong. Eighthly, he shared something especially important. When your children marry, do not expect too much from them. And more importantly, do not interfere. In your heart, you may still see them as your little boy or girl. But they're grown now. Their lives, their decisions, their relationships are no longer yours to manage. The professor said, "The tighter you pull on the string, the more the kite resists. But let go just a little, and it soars higher." One elderly father told the story of his son marrying a woman from a different culture. At first, he tried to offer advice. Then, he gave opinions. Then warnings. Until one day his son said, "Dad, please let me build my own home." And that moment hurt. But it also set him free. He realized that love sometimes means letting go, not of the relationship, but of control. Give your children space. Bless their marriage without managing it. And you'll be surprised how often they come back to you, freely, lovingly. Ninthly, the professor said this with calm sincerity. Sleep with a clear mind. Don't carry today into tomorrow. Don't let your worries keep you awake at night. As we age, our minds can become like spinning wheels. We lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about health problems, family issues, the past, the future, and on. But worry is a thief. It steals your sleep, your peace, and your joy. And worse, most of the things we worry about, they don't even happen. A man named Ron, 81, shared how he used to wake up at 2 a.m. every night, gripped by anxiety. Would his pension be enough? What if he had a stroke? What if his daughter stopped visiting? But then he started a new habit. Every night, he'd write down one thing he was thankful for before bed. Just one. And slowly, those quiet moments began to replace the panic. The professor reminded us, most problems feel smaller in the morning. So let the night be a place for rest, not rumination. Protect your sleep like your life depends on it, because it does. And tenthly, he offered a gentle smile and said, "Don't be so thrifty that you miss out on life's joys. Spend before it's too late." We've spent our whole lives saving, being careful, putting money away for a rainy day. But for many older adults, the rainy day is here and they're still afraid to open the umbrella. He told of a woman, Jenny, who had dreamed of going to Italy her entire life. She had the money, the health, the time, but she kept saying, maybe next year. And then next year became the year her knees gave out. And the year after that, her eyesight began to fade. And finally, she said, "I waited too long." The professor said, we store candy all our lives, but forget to eat it. So eat the candy. Buy the good shoes. Take the trip. Eat the expensive dessert. Share a meal with friends. Life is not about saving until the end. It's about savoring while you still can. Because no one remembers the money you didn't spend. But they will remember the joy you did. 11thly, he said, don't work yourself to exhaustion anymore. Health is not optional. It's your last true wealth. If you feel tired, rest. If something aches, slow down. If your heart feels heavy, stop and sit quietly. Your body is not a machine, and it never was. But now, more than ever, it needs gentle care. There's this mindset that some older adults carry, that they have to keep pushing through the pain, keep being useful, keep doing more, because stopping feels like giving up. But that's not true. In fact, knowing when to pause is wisdom. The professor told the story of a man named Donald, who prided himself on never taking a day off. Even in his 70s, he was still helping his neighbors with repairs, carrying groceries, staying up late fixing things. Until one afternoon, he fainted in his garden. It turned out to be a warning sign from his heart. He survived, but he told the professor, "I didn't realize rest was a responsibility, not a reward." Too many people believe that medicine will fix everything. But prevention, self-care, and listening to your own body, that's real healing. Hospitals are the most expensive places in the world, not just financially, but emotionally. Don't wait until you collapse to give yourself permission to rest. You are not lazy. You are human, and you've done enough. It's okay now to slow down. And don't forget your mind. A cheerful spirit is part of health too. Laugh often. Watch something silly. Call an old friend. Cry if you need to, and then smile again. Your mood shapes your cells. Joy heals in ways science still doesn't fully understand. Before we pause for today, the professor left us with one powerful image. Your health is the root of the tree. When the root is strong, the leaves bloom, the shade is wide, and others can rest under you. But when the root weakens, everything else begins to wither. So protect your root. It is not selfish to take care of yourself. It is a gift to everyone who loves you. And 12thly, the professor leaned in and said in the calmest voice, "Speak less, give more grace, and hold on to your peace." These, he said, are the quiet superpowers of old age. You no longer need to prove a point. You no longer need to argue, correct, or control. Let others talk. Let them believe what they want. You've already lived through storms they haven't even imagined yet. He gently warned us, don't lie, don't threaten, and don't say words that cut too deeply. Because at this age, words carry more weight. A single sentence can build a bridge or burn one down. He told the story of Mr. Takashi, a retired teacher who once snapped at his daughter-in-law over something small. Years later, she still remembered that moment. He apologized, but the crack in the relationship never fully healed. So before you speak, ask yourself, will this help or will this hurt? Can I let it go instead? Silence at this stage of life is not weakness. It's wisdom and grace. Offering others the benefit of the doubt is not about being naive. It's about choosing peace over pride. You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to carry every burden. And you certainly don't need to let anger live rent-free in your heart. Because anger is like acid. It doesn't destroy what it's thrown at. It destroys the container it's kept in. Let it go. Let small slights pass. Protect your emotional health like you protect your physical health. The professor's words were simple. You don't need to win the conversation. You need to win your own peace. As we come to the final part of this journey, I hope something in these words has helped you pause and breathe a little deeper. Sometimes all we need is for someone to say out loud what we've quietly felt in our hearts for a long time. And that's what the retired professor from Stanford offered. Not theories, not fancy ideas, but life, plain and real. He closed his message with a series of quiet warnings and reminders. Not loud alarms, but gentle taps on the shoulder. Things to be careful of. Habits to let go. Truths to carry. He said, as we grow older, there are 3 types of matters we should no longer involve ourselves in, unless we are directly asked and absolutely necessary. Firstly, don't interfere when it comes to your children's decisions about buying a house or car. Yes, you may have experience. Yes, you may want to help. But if they don't ask for your advice, don't offer it. Your guidance might come from love, but it can feel like control to them. Let them walk their own paths. Let them make mistakes and learn. You've done your part. Secondly, don't get involved in disputes or politics among your extended relatives. These things often revolve around property, inheritance, or old grudges. And you might not know the full story. Even if you're trying to be helpful, you may unintentionally stir up more tension or bring trouble into your own life. Protect your peace. Family harmony doesn't mean inserting yourself. It means setting an example by staying calm and steady. Thirdly, don't step into the middle of someone else's romantic or marital problems, especially friends. You might think you're helping, but relationships are delicate. Most couples, in the end, will figure it out on their own. And if they don't, it shouldn't be on your shoulders. Be a kind listener, yes, but don't try to solve what isn't yours to solve. Carrying other people's emotional weight can break your back more than your own. Then he spoke of something even more practical, money. Specifically, the 3 types of money you should avoid lending in old age. First, do not lend money unless it is a true emergency, like a serious illness or disaster. Why? Because at this stage of life, your savings are your safety net. Giving away too easily can leave you vulnerable. And if the person you lent to doesn't pay you back, it's not just about the money. It's about the trust that breaks. That's far harder to recover. Second, don't lend money for business or financial investments, especially those that sound too good to be true. The older you are, the less time you have to recover from financial loss. And the sad truth is, if their plan fails, you lose. But if their plan succeeds, you might get very little in return. Either way, it's not worth the stress. Third, never lend money for gambling. This one, the professor said, needs no debate. Gambling is quicksand. Lending money for it is like throwing water into a sinking ship. You almost never get it back. And even worse, you might lose the relationship too. He said it clearly. You worked your whole life for your comfort, your stability, and your dignity. Don't trade it away out of guilt or pressure. Lending money may look like kindness, but sometimes protecting what you have is the greater act of wisdom. Next, he warned us against 3 foolish actions. First, don't neglect your health. That may sound obvious, but many older adults ignore the early signs, thinking it's just a small ache, or I'll deal with it later. But small aches become big problems. And once health is lost, you realize it was everything. So don't smoke. Don't overeat. Don't drown your stress in alcohol. Be kind to your body. It's the only place you have to live. Second, don't make mistakes in your relationships. That means don't say things you can't take back. Don't isolate yourself. Don't act out of anger. Because at this age, the energy it takes to repair a broken relationship is often more than we have. Avoid saying things that leave a permanent scar. Be the one who brings calm, not chaos. Third, don't get involved in helping others through middlemen or unofficial channels. Don't use your name or connections to vouch for something you don't fully understand. Because if things go wrong, people won't blame the system, they'll blame you. And at this point in life, your peace and your reputation are not things you want to put at risk. Then the professor offered something a bit more philosophical. 3 things you should not wish for in old age. Don't wish for great wealth. Wish only for enough to eat well, to sleep warm, to live free from worry. Too much money can attract problems. Enough money brings quiet. Don't wish for others to always save you. Wish instead to remain capable, to do as much as you can for yourself. Independence, even in small things, builds dignity. And don't wish for everyone you helped in the past to repay you. Some will, some won't. But your conscience is your reward. You did good because it was right, not because you wanted applause. He also reminded us of 3 things we must avoid saying. Don't lie. At this age, the truth is far simpler and far more freeing. Speak honestly and kindly. Don't use harsh or threatening words to control people. That power fades fast, and what stays is the hurt. And don't say things that wound the hearts of others deeply. Words carry weight, and people remember more than you think, especially the ones that hurt. Finally, he closed with a tender message. There are 3 things we should never give up on. Don't give up on wanting to look presentable. Looking neat and clean is not vanity, it's self-respect. When you dress with care, you remind yourself that you still matter. Don't give up on kindness. Even when others are rude, even when the world feels harsh, hold on to your gentleness. It's the most human part of you. And don't give up on joy, laughter, curiosity, lightness. Find something every day, no matter how small, that lifts your heart. And to tie it all together, he offered one final reminder. Don't fear 3 things. Don't fear growing old. Aging is nature's way. It is not failure, it is a privilege. Don't fear being alone. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Solitude can be full of peace. And don't fear the future. What will come will come. You can't control it, but you can prepare your heart to meet it with calm. In the end, age is not a number. It's a mindset. You can be 85 and radiant or 55 and bitter. What matters is whether your spirit stays young. Whether you continue to feel, to hope, to care, to forgive, that's real youth. The professor left us with this final thought. Old age isn't something to fear. The real fear is not knowing how to enjoy it. So live in peace, live in truth, and above all live. Thank you for staying with me through these reflections. If even one part of this message helped you breathe easier, think deeper, or smile again, then it's done its job. And if you believe someone else in your life, perhaps a friend, a sibling, or even a neighbor, might need to hear this too, don't hesitate to share it. I'll see you again soon. Until then, may you live these years not with regret, but with grace.